Okay.
Hey,
Hello, how are you?
good. How are you?
Yeah, all good, thanks. Yeah.
You've got a cardigan on. Is it cold, Mima?
It's a bit cooler. I have had the windows open to get some fresh air, but we did have some rain this morning, so I think I'm just used to like
I know,
cool
yeah,
breeze now.
I know. It's quite a nice shot to the system, isn't it?
Yeah.
Morning.
Oh, hi, Larissa.
Morning, Will.
Morning.
We're just talking about how it's quite nice that it's a bit cooler.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I love the sunny weather though. I really do. Really loving it. But yeah, are you doing some different things now and eating some different things now it's a bit cooler than you were? The emergency measures have relaxed.
Well, my big priority today is it going to be warm enough that my wash will dry in time because I am going
Yeah,
away this evening. So I'm like, come on, we need the last little bit of sun so I
yeah.
can put all my washing away.
And you're going away this evening, Kate?
Yeah, I'm just going to dog sit for my brother and his fiance's dog in Hastings. So yeah, going up
Oh,
after work, which would
nice.
be nice. And then I've got a few days booked off then while I'm there. So yeah, have a little bit of a break as well.
Love a house sit.
Yeah.
Will, have you been away?
Uh, no, I haven't been away. But in fairness, well, I had been because I went to Australia at the beginning of the year. Went to Poland actually, a couple of months ago, maybe just over a month ago. So I feel like I've not gone away over the summer, but I've made up for it in other ways.
Yeah,
So
you haven't
yeah,
really
I
needed
can't
to. I mean,
complain. Yeah,
no, the weather's been so nice. I think having a staycation's been a really good
yeah,
choice.
yeah.
Although I did think a lot about Larissa's holiday of a week in Italy to laze around and then a week of culture and eating. I said to my husband, that is a winning combination, isn't it? The 2 weeks. Larissa, are you still kind of enjoying the feeling, the post-holiday feeling, or are you ready for another one?
Yeah, I feel like maybe it's a bit of a distant memory. But yeah, I would definitely recommend it. It's like a good it's a good period of time to feel like you have both relaxed and also had fun um doing stuff. So yeah, that's good.
I think I'll go down well with the kids as well to have a bit of both. They've got into eating good food lately, which is expensive for us because they can't just fob them off with the kids' burger anymore. We have to give them the sea bream or the steak. Drat. Alex, how about you? Have you done anything nice this summer?
Yeah, we came back on Friday from sort of 3 weeks in Greece, which was really nice. Yeah, we had a week on Santorini, which was really cool because we'd never been to Santorini before, and then we had 2 weeks on an island called Naxos, which is sort of that's our go-to. Been there for 15 years. We know and love the island, and yeah, it was really nice.
Oh, lovely. So would you go to Santorini again?
Yeah, I think so. It's certainly incredibly epic. Naxos is a really lovely island, but it's got lovely kind of white sand beaches and it's nice and flat in lots of ways. Whereas Santorini is all cliffs and mountains and volcanic sand and pumice. It's quite kind of cool when you're there. But it doesn't have quite the same just chilled vibe.
Yeah.
It's far more of an exciting island than it is a let's just laze around island.
And where do you said you often go to Naxos? Do you have a place where you always stay?
Yeah, there's an apartment that we know the people and we always stay there and it's 2 minutes from the beach and
Oh,
it's just really nice. But weirdly, it was cooler there than it was here in the UK. It was sort of 27, 28 there, but back here it's sort of 33 and 35. So actually landing on Friday and walking out of Heathrow, it was like, walking into an oven.
wow.
So I kind of joked like, hey, let's just get back on the plane.
Yeah.
Where it's
Wow.
going.
Wow. Yeah, I know. It's been such a weird summer, hasn't it, for that? We had a bit of rain last night, actually. So
Yeah.
hopefully there's some rain coming as well as some still some sunny spells to enjoy. But I love hearing about other people's holidays. And I've written down Naxos. We've never been, but what a great
Yeah,
shout out.
it's really worth it.
Okay, cool. I might be contacting you individually to say, who do I ring? Like, where do I go? Italy as well, Alyssa. Like, sounds brilliant. Okay, good. So let's continue the good vibes. We're thinking today about a couple of communication tools. And I'm really excited about these ones in particular. They've been absolute game changers for lots of people I know and lots of people I coach. I hope you enjoyed looking at them in the altitude sessions. And the mindset for today is inspired by a program I watched a couple of years ago called The Biggest Little Farm. It was on Netflix, but now apparently it's available on Amazon TV and Apple TV. And on that farm, there's an expert that comes to this family farm. And he talks about the importance of really preparing soil, really planning what goes where, which plants actually can coexist in a way that means that they will both benefit from being next door to one another. And the time it takes, he's emphasizing the time it takes really to do this in a way that is really beneficial for the farm and for the ecosystem as a whole. And he makes this comment, and I wrote it down. I thought that's such a great thing to say. He says, no one has time to do it properly. Everyone has time to do it over. And I thought, how true is that? Not just of farming, not just of physical things, but of communication as well. How often am I tempted to just try to get something done and get it off my to-do list, deal with it efficiently? But actually, when I do that too often, it's a false economy. It ends up taking me more time down the line to sort out the misunderstanding than if I'd paused and just gone a little bit more slowly at the time. So it's that sense of trying not to be hasty and trying to just slow down with communication and thinking, how can I do this properly so that it doesn't then come back to bite me and come back to harm others as well? You know, Jeremy and Steve on the modules talk about scars, leaving scars. And these two tools, if they're misused, they can leave wounds and they can leave scars. So what we're trying to say today is before we do that, let's learn a good tool today that will help us to show up as healthy as we can. And it just reflects Jesus' teaching, the Bible teaching in James chapter 3 about the tongue. And often this passage has a subtitle, Taming the Tongue. That's not actually in the text, but it's quite a helpful little phrase. How can we make sure we tame our communication for it to be most effective? And this is the bit that I think speaks into the tools today. The tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is considerate. And I think that sense of a forest fire, it's so poignant at the moment, isn't it? I was out for a walk the other day in a forest and we could see some smoke. And when we went to the cafe to fill up our water bottles, she said, I'm sorry, we don't have any water. The fire brigade is using our water to put a fire out just down the way. So, you know, we've had, probably lots of us have seen those alerts coming through on the phones, and that sense of the Prime Minister describing, you know, the country in those sorts of terms as a sort of touch paper, as something that is very easily set alight at the moment because it is so dry. And in the same way, I think society is dry. Society, you know, we've had 7 prime ministers in 10 years. There's lots of polarization. People are really kind of quickly biting back, cancelling, lashing out at different people. And actually, if we're not careful, then fires can start very quickly. But in contrast to that, these tools help us just to slow down. They help us to pause, and they help us to communicate properly. And they help us to communicate with consideration. That word consideration has also come up quite a bit this summer when our kids are yelling in the garden and arguing and people are trying to relax in their gardens nearby. I've definitely said, come on, be considerate. I heard a guy actually round the corner shouting to the guy next door to tell his dog to pipe down and said, where's your consideration? So that word's being used a fair amount at the moment. How can we be people who lead with consideration in our communication? And these 2 tools will help us to do that. So I hope that whets your appetite and encourages you to lean in to the tools today. The first one has been described by somebody in a workshop as a game changer for my marriage. That was what she said. She said, this could save my marriage, this tool. And it comes about when one person in the group or in the team or in the friendship is in the provisional space and another person thinks they're in the promise space. Real awful miscommunications can occur. But what it's doing is the tool is representing 3 stages of certainty, 3 stages of ideation, if you like. You start with the provisional space where you throw ideas around, blue sky thinking, we might do this, or wouldn't it be cool to do X? Or maybe one day we could. But sometimes we don't preface it with those provisional statements. And what another person might hear is this is happening, which can cause a lot of distress when we realise it's not happening. And it can cause a lot of misunderstanding and work actually that's wasted. So provisional stage is really important. Some people find this the most energizing stage of all, when ideas are thrown around and when we can consider all options. So let's talk about it as the 30 or the 13 ideas. At some point, though, we need to boil that down from 13 or 30 to 3. And that's the planning stage. In the planning stage, we haven't necessarily plumped on one idea, but we might be looking at 2 or 3 variations of an idea or of a solution to a problem. And that's where cost benefit analysis comes in. That's where we need to just run the figures. That's where we might need to do a bit more research into these possibilities to see whether they're viable and which one might be the best one possible. So we're not yet certain, but we're not really throwing ideas around. We're now looking at something with a bit of scrutiny, and that's the planning stage. And then finally, we decide which idea we're going to go with, what the course of action is, and we have a structured series of sequences in place that suggest that this is going to happen. And this is when we say, yes, this is happening now. This is when we can actually announce this is going to be what the next couple of years is going to look like, or what the next solution is going to look like. Or if you're in a family context, this is what holiday we're going to take next year. It's booked. It's going to happen. So lots of things can happen when we are all in these different modes. We had a situation a couple of years ago with my sister, and my sister and her husband are very much, their default mode here is promise. And James and I, our default mode is probably somewhere between provisional and plan. And we were around the Christmas puzzle table. We were all having a bit of a mulled wine, doing the Downton Abbey Christmas puzzle. And they started talking about going to Swanage in the summer, which is where Andy's father's from. And we said, oh, tell us more about Swanage. What's it like? Started to show an interest. And they started to think we were saying we were going to come. So they were like, oh, this is what you do. This is where you stay. And we were enjoying what we thought was a provisional conversation about a potential holiday in Swanage in July with them. But they were hearing that we were coming to Swanage. They heard a commitment, and we didn't qualify that it was provisional. So imagine my horror in March when I had a text from Jen saying, we've booked our Airbnb. Have you booked yours? I said to James, what's this? What's this about? And he said, oh no, they must have thought we committed to Swanage, and we've already said we're doing something else. We're off to France in the caravan with those other. I was like, oh no. And actually explaining that did cause a wound between Jenny and Andy. They were really disappointed and felt that we had reneged on something that we had committed to. So we should have known better. We knew the tool, and that really taught us a lesson that if we aren't clear in our communication about what we're doing, then we will hurt others. It also taught us that everybody has a default phase. So I'm going to ask you to be thinking about what your default P is. When you hear communication, do you hear it might happen? Do you hear this is a good possibility it will happen? Or do you hear this is happening? Because sometimes that can be in the hearer, in the ears of the hearer. What do you hear? So be thinking about how you communicate with others and also what you hear as well. And that's a lens that you can now use to check what you've heard is actually what has been said. So Claire, over to you. Anything to add?
Yeah, I think as a nurturer, I definitely, prior to this tool, had a tendency to kind of take on the weight of the provisional. My partner is a connector and does a lot of external processing, and yeah, I was definitely in the habit of like feeling like all these different options were kind of causing me stress and weight, and actually realizing that I don't have to take on the weight of that provisional. I can, stop a conversation, redirect, if I need to, and yeah, that has made life a lot happier.
That's so good, Claire. And that's an example, isn't it, of what can happen when one person's talking provisionally, which can be very energizing for them.
Mm.
And they're just externally processing, aren't they? And Claire's partner Paul does that a lot. Is that right? So
Oh, yeah.
he's throwing these things out there, but what you're hearing is something that needs to be grounded. So what the person, the nurturers and the guardians can often do is they pull it into the now. And they want to know, when's this going to happen and what are the details?
Mm.
How are we going to do that? And that can be really helpful in the promise stage of ideation and also a little bit in the plan, but it's not helpful in the provisional stage. It's a bit like there's a proverb in the Bible that says, the bird flies over your head, don't let it land in your hair, don't let it nest. And so if you're hearing someone processing, just let those ideas fly, let them get flow. And like you say, Claire, you're going to be exhausted if you're constantly trying to make them all happen. And even though I'm in the provisional plan space as a pioneer, I'm married to a connector, and it's often me that starts to pull things into the ground and bring in those how and when questions in our partnership. So be thinking about that for yourself as well. So this is where the voices land, and I've put them into the colours for you. The pioneers, the creators, and the connectors tend to be happier in the provisional space, especially if they're extroverted. They're speaking it out loud. And so you'll hear lots of ideas. You may even start to act on them, but pause, because the nurturers and the guardians tend to be happier in the plan and the promise stage. Now, what I've heard a lot as I've been traveling around is guardians like to be brought in the planning stage. They don't like to be told exactly what's happening because they like to help to weigh those things up. So just be aware of where you are. And this will also depend on where your second and third voices are as well. So if you're a nurturer connector, you may well enjoy the provisional stage more than a nurturer guardian might. So there's just some clues there to get you thinking about your preferences and to get you talking. And the questions for the breakout are these. Which P is your default? So which one do you hear and which one do you use the most? And which P might need your intentionality? And who? Is there somebody in your life? Is there a key friend or a key teammate or your partner who just might need you to be intentional in that space of the provisional or of the promise? Where do you need to be a bit more careful and considerate? And then share that with the person you're with in the group. Okay, so hopefully there's plenty there you may feel, I don't know how you're feeling right now, you might feel a bit aggy, a bit challenged, it might be a bit uncomfortable, or you might feel quite encouraged and enthusiastic about chatting. I hope so. So any questions before we go into breakouts to clarify? Great. Okay, enjoy that chat, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts when you come back. Hello. Alex, let's start with you. Any thoughts?
Well, I'll just pick up on literally what we kind of finished talking about, which is just interesting how one can change over time. Because I used to be someone for whom planning, no way, very lastminute.com, very, we'll figure it out in the day. Sure, we'll be fine. And but in the last 5 years, I've become a massive fan of planning. Just love a good Gantt chart, love a good spreadsheet, all that stuff. And it's, I think, helped me a lot in, both work stuff and also just home planning. Whether it's holidays or just planning the kids, weeks and months and all stuff like that. And it's really helpful to you be able to use that language with the people around me and in my team. And they know that, okay, cool. He's not going to come to the meeting and just necessarily do the whole, blue sky thinking thing. He's actually going to come in with a lot of pre-planned ideas. They're all subject to change, but that I'd actually prefer to plan it out first than to just, do that. But I think Larissa and I were both sort of touching on how much we appreciate the promise aspect of a thing. So if we know a thing is going to happen, then we can be more inclined towards, the planning and the blue sky thinking and the getting excited. But if it's just a tentative idea, are we going to necessarily get super excited and, get super committed?
Yeah. Okay, good. So what I'm hearing there is planning is a real strength. That's something that is your default perhaps, but provisional might need a bit more intentionality. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Yeah,
Well, for
Larissa,
me at least, yeah.
what is it about the provisional that you're hesitant about?
I think it's simply that because one is busy, one has a lot of different things that are important. And if the person in that meeting is saying, this is super important, and we're going to get excited and we're going to use all our brain power and we're going to do all this stuff, and it's maybe only a 5% chance of happening, then
Mm.
there's a big part of me that's going, I have another 3 of these meetings. So why am I going to then commit all that side of me to something that may not even happen? So
Yeah.
I prefer that to be a more 60, 70, 80% chance of happening if I'm going to get that excited about it.
So good. So the reluctance with the blue sky thinking is how much time it can take up, especially if there's a team meeting there and people are throwing ideas around. Is that the best use of time? Let's bring Larissa in then, because you were chatting with Larissa. What were your thoughts on this, Larissa? Anything to add?
I think it's really helpful within a team to, if you're going to have a meeting about a project or whatever, to really define what you're doing. So, we do have every couple of weeks we have creative review sessions, and it's a bit like that's a very brainstorming thing of like, we're going to brainstorm around this project for an hour. No idea is a bad idea, just chuck everything out there. And then we have other meetings where we're like, right, this is the thing that we're going to do. How are we going to do it? And actually, the definition is really important, because if you're confused about what a blue sky meeting is and you think that all those crazy things that are coming out of people's mouths that you're going to have to make them happen, that's not, some people do not like that, probably myself included. And also I was saying a bit to Alex that my husband kind of really likes the provisional space. So he's kind of, he loves thinking about kind of big ideas and all the possibilities and stuff. And actually I like to kind of do the planning and get the thing done and kind of book it in and write it down on a calendar or a list or something to make sure that it happens. So actually he thinks of loads and loads of ideas. I decide which is the best one, and then I make it happen. And that like worked really well for us in our relationship. So
yeah. I mean, it's intriguing, Larissa, because you and Aldi are both pioneers. Is that right?
Well, I think that Oldie is a chameleon, and I know that that is not one of the options. But he basically is what he needs to be at the time. So for work, yeah, for sure, he's a pioneer. Whereas at home, not really so much. So
Yeah, okay. And I think that's true, isn't it? When you work closely with somebody, whether that's at home or at work, that you play a role, and sometimes you have to sort of be someone who does a particular thing. So, Larissa, I'm hearing that you say that you do the plan promise bit and Aldi does the provisional plan, but you might sometimes enjoy the provisional space as well. So it's creating places and spaces for people to be energized by the phase that energizes them. And the last thing that people in the provisional space need is those of us who are pulling it into the promise stage all the time, when the balloons are going up in the air. What about this? What about that? The provisional people are having a wonderful time, and it can be quite hard for them if those of us who like to actually commit to things are saying, well, what, when, and who and how. And it's definitely something a role I play with my connector husband as well, is to say, well, how can we do that? Because we've already said we're going to do this. And he's like, oh, I was just having a lovely time, just sort of provisionally speaking. And that's important for energizing. And often when I let James do the provisional space, he thinks of things I would never have thought of. So it's really important that you have spaces for the provisional, but exactly like Alex said, it can't take over, because otherwise nothing would ever get done. And that's the problem. When we're in the promise plan space, we don't want someone to be trying to take it off at tangents when it's already been agreed. Good, really good thoughts there. Kate, let's come to you.
Yeah, so as a nurture guardian, I definitely resonate with the lean towards promise and plan. I think, yeah, certainly promise is my safe space and where I'd like to be, but I also do love a good plan, and I do love that kind of getting a little bit earlier into the process and applying that sort of blue analytical thinking. In terms of provisional, I think this is something I do obviously struggle with the most out of the stages, and obviously therefore needs more intentionality. But yeah, I was sharing with Will that I did try to implement this the other day with a friend. So we sort of she'd messaged and say about meeting up, and when because she lives a few hours away, our catch-ups always end up sort of being a weekend thing. So my gut is that instant go to promise that, yeah, get the date in, I'm committed, I'm there. But as I'm starting a theology course in September, and I already sort of have a bit of a busy September anyway, I was like, yes, I would love to catch up with you soon. I've got a busy September and I'd rather sort of have that month to settle into the pattern of sort of working and studying. And then we can check back in with the date in October. So just trying to be clearer of like, rather than kind of over committing and, under delivering effectively of, not having the time or being sort of able to fully commit and be present for that, sort of just being clear of like, yes, I would still love to do that, but not quite ready to go into like all the dates and details yet.
Very good. And allowing yourself to not have to make a promise, allowing yourself to stay. Actually, we need to keep this in plan stage. Let's circle back in October. That's good. If this tool helped to legitimize that hesitation, and to release you from feeling you had to commit, I think that's a really good use of the tool. Okay, so yeah, well done. Will, anything to add there?
Yeah, definitely a planner, but the intentionality piece is the provisional. So I'm very much an ideas man as well. Um, Strangely, yeah, lots and lots of ideas. But one of the things I thought about in terms of children is just that intentionality around, you can have a lot of ideas, but if people are hearing it as a commitment, as a promise, then that's the last thing you want to do is break promises to your kids. But it's just making it super clear. It's that nuance in communication that Kate and I were chatting about as well, and even just being super enthusiastic about ideas, a bit like what your example, Laura, earlier. I think if you're the kind to really be optimistic and encouraging, that can be a signal misread to be like, oh, you're in, like, oh, we're doing this. So no, I'm just encouraging you. I think it's a great idea. So yeah, it's those cues and just being super clear about what where you stand on things, I think.
So good, Will. And that's what this tool is that it's clarity. And clarity is kindness, right? With my sister, I couldn't go, can I just teach you a tool so this doesn't happen again? That would have been really patronizing. She's my older sister. We just had to suck it up. We had to just eat humble pie. We've got this wrong. We know better. We know the tool. But it would have taken a long time to explain it all. But if you teach it to your family and your team, you can teach to your kids, that's fine, that's not patronizing. You can teach it to your team and say, right, let's have this language to hand. It becomes that really quick, easy way to clarify. And you can use it both ways. So sometimes now when James wants to just do blue sky thinking, he says, can we just talk provisionally for a bit? And I can feel inside myself a gear shift. I could just relax. Yeah, right. I don't need to go into how, like Claire was saying, I don't need to make this happen. I can enjoy it. I'm going to go along with him for the ride. I'm going to let the birds fly over my head. Great. But if he doesn't say that, I might need to ask him, is this a plan or is this a promise? No, it's provisional. Great. Okay, now we know where we are. So it's both ways. It's communicating using the tool both ways. You might want to put it up somewhere on the notice board or have it as a tool focus for your team as well. It will really save you time and more wounds down the line. Good. Anything else from anyone else? Claire, anything that you particularly noticed there, or do we need to emphasize, do you think?
No, I think, yeah.
We there? Great. Okay, so let's move on then to the next tool in communication. And I won't spend too long on this, but I'll let you guys have a bit of a chat about it. We've circled onto this before, we've mentioned it before, and it's particularly in the space of bringing challenge. When we need to have a conversation that's a little bit hard, then, or we know it's going to be a bit awkward, it's going to come best as we move up the scale. So think of that conversation with Jenny and Andy, who thought we were going to Swanage with them. We're really looking forward to it. We had to go, oh no, this is going to be difficult. The worst thing I could have done was text Jen. Oh no, you got it wrong. We're not coming. Okay. I knew it had to be a phone call. Ideally, it's a video chat where face to face, I can say, this is going to be hard and I'm sorry we've got this wrong. But the reason it works so well when it's face to face, or when she's seeing my face, is because the stats tell us that only 7% of communication is the text. Now, you know this as Bible Society. People can misinterpret the Bible all the time when they read it on their own, because only 7% of communication is the text. A lot of it is the tone, and then a big proportion is the body language associated with it. I've got the stats right here, and I can't remember them without looking. So I'm going to just pull up the slide now. I've got it down here in my notes. So let's have a little look here. Underneath. Where are my notes?
I wrote it down yesterday, Laura. It's
Go ahead. Thank you, Claire.
Body language 55%, tone is 37%, and then words is 5%. Yeah.
Seven. Incredible. So body language, how much was it?
55.
55%. Over 50% of communication is your body language. So if someone can't see your body, they are way more likely to misinterpret what you're trying to say. And that's why we're going to try to get everything onto at least a video chat, if not an in-person. You might need to follow up with an email. You might need to, especially if it's a tricky situation at work, you might need to make sure you've got a paper trail, but trying to make sure that that person can see your body language and can hear your tone. That's where you get you're much more likely to hear. And yet so many people's default would be the text message or the email or even the social media. And when I first learned this tool, I realized I had written an article about an employment issue that had wrangled me from years and years and years ago when I went on my maternity leave, and I'd written it as an article instead of, and that's my social media nudge, instead of actually going to that person and saying, do you know what? That wasn't handled brilliantly in my view, and here's why. So we all need to eat humble pie slightly when we look at this and think, oh, I've got this wrong. We've all got it wrong. But how can we make sure that going forward, we act with more consideration in this space? So here's the breakout to thought for you to chat about. Which medium is your default when bringing challenge? What do you tend to do, if anything? Some of us tend to stick our heads in the sand from time to time. And then secondly, what positive and negative examples have you experienced? So let's try and share some good practice, times when it's perhaps we've learned from something, a mistake perhaps we've made or someone else has made, but also times when someone's done this really well. What can we learn from that? So any questions on the tool to clarify? Okay, great. Into a breakout room then. I think let's go 8 minutes, Claire, for this one. Share good practice. Share your defaults. Share your mistakes. Be vulnerable. And let's hear. I look forward to hearing from you in a minute. Yeah. Good. We'll just let the other two come back in. They're obviously having an in-depth debate. Maybe they're texting each other the challenges to the arguments each other have raised.
And their videos off.
Hello. We were just speculating about whether you were in a deep discussion.
Almost, yeah.
Pretty much. Good. Let's go in reverse order. So we'll start with you this time.
So I naturally default to email. That's because, again, I'm a detailed person, also fairly introverted. So email, I like to know that I've got all my points across. On the phone, tendency to not feel confident that I can express myself and all of my views. But in an email, it's documented, it's there, there's a nice trail. But certainly things in the work setting, so that's more sort of business, dealing with the utilities companies and things, always email, I won't phone them. In person, though, for sure, for things like one-to-ones, when we're in the office, I'll try to, schedule those when we're there, because you do want that face-to-face, just so much more personal. People understand the cues and the tone, and it's just more preferable, isn't it?
Yes. So if it's a company, it's an email because then it's all documented. But if it's a person in your team, then you get them in person. That sounds pretty good, pretty wise. Anything to learn from? Any mistakes or any good practice?
For me, no, not really. I think that's my background's in media anyway, so a lot of this is, I've known this for quite some time. I don't have any horror stories or anything to share, but just good practice. And it's just how I work as well. I do prefer email, even though I know it's not, necessarily the best mode of communication, but for me it works.
And you can lean into that. So you can write your concern on an email, but then you might not want to click send necessarily. You might just have it there prepared. You've prepared what you want to say, you've boiled it down. I always think boil it down to one thing, Laura. I tend to think like a lawyer and sort of back up my case with lots of different examples, because I'm worried that they might not see the point I'm trying to make very clearly. And I think, no, it's one thing, boil it down, and then just put it on hold, and then have the conversation, and then you can always follow up with the email after.
I do have just one learning, actually, just on the email thing. I was taught some time ago, when you get an email and you feel challenged by it, or, it needs some sort of immediate response, where you think it does, maybe write that email, but actually sleep on it. Like, just let it sit, come back to it, fresh eyes the next day. And 9 times out of 10, you discover that actually, that's probably a bit harsh, and you'll redraft it, and actually it will go with a better, more reasoned tone. That's one of the downsides, I think, of things like email, and it can be misread and miscommunicated. So sleep on it.
So it's better to sleep on it. It's better to just go over it again. But it's still, according to the stats here, neurolinguistic programming is the sort of basis on which we've made these stats. It's still risky to send the email, because you don't know the context that person is reading it in. You don't know where they're at. You don't know when they're opening it, and you don't know how they're going to read it, in what tone of voice they're going to assign to it. So much better for us to them to at least hear the tone, and preferably see the body language alongside, which we can do now with all these video chats we can have with anyone all over the world. There's no excuse. Great, thanks, Will. Really good thoughts. Kate, anything to add?
Yeah, so similarly to Will, I think as you sort of lean towards email, also it's a slight challenge of a lot of the time I give sort of feedback or challenges, because it's through the medium of email, because that's kind of, so we have like an editorial QA process. So if I've sort of obviously been asked to edit a piece, the current format we do that is via email. So sometimes, perhaps, I can't really have a call with everyone I kind of deliver feedback to in that regard, but I try to sort of, say thank you for this piece, I really like this bit or whatever. So just to get a bit of nuancing. So obviously ultimately it is by nature, feedback. I think overall, like if there's opportunity to kind of lean more towards video and in person, that's great. And when the context is right for that, that I will lean towards that. But I think another thing I did flag is like sometimes actually I don't always find that video chats or in person can be helpful for you as the person bringing the challenge, because sometimes I have found, if I give this piece of, advice or recommendation, people instantly are feel as though you've sort of offended them or you've, insulted their efforts or whatever. But even if obviously you should be using body language to encourage them. But I think obviously people ultimately don't really like being challenged, do they? And so sometimes I do find that difficult, and I think it can lead to people sort of saying things off the cuff or in the heat of the moment that they wouldn't have probably done if, as Will said, they've left the email for a few hours to mull over.
So maybe think about then if you're on the receiving end of somebody, perhaps even on a video chat, giving you some feedback that feels challenging. You don't have to respond there in the moment. That might be a little tool in your toolkit would be to say, can I just have some time to think about that? I'll come back to you. As long as you do come back to them, then that's fine. I might need 24 hours, might need 48 hours, especially for an introvert. We need time to go away and process something that's just been said. We don't always have, that we don't always aren't always able to know how we feel in the immediacy. So pausing and giving the other person the opportunity to pause as well might be helpful. Recording the call might be helpful, so someone could go back and have another listen to it and have another look. And sometimes it might not be as big a challenge as they thought initially. I've definitely had that experience myself. Good, Kate. Larissa.
I think when you've got to have difficult conversations with people, I think it should always be a conversation, whether that's when you're in the office all the time, that's, it's good to do it in person. But I think realistically, probably we function a lot on Teams these days with Teams calls. But I think it is important to have that kind of personal element to it. I think the problem comes with emails and stuff is that people can read things differently and can misconstrue what's being written, particularly if it's about an issue that's kind of a bit more difficult to talk about. And I think with email, I've kind of learned never put something in writing that you wouldn't be happy for anyone other than the recipient to read, because chances are that stuff can get forwarded or, for other people to see it. And I think there's a little bit like what Will said about kind of sleep on it, like never, if you're really annoyed about something, never like respond in the heat of the moment to it, because you can end up regretting something that's been written when you're not feeling as calm, perhaps, as usual.
Great tip. Yeah, totally agree. Yeah. That's really helpful. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, I would. In person is definitely the best way. I think there's a realness and authenticity to it. They can, I think even if it's bad news or difficult news, I think they appreciate the uncomfortableness everybody's experiencing in that moment, which I think is really helpful. I think the hardest thing, actually, for me over the past couple of years has been learning that in certain situations with certain people, that actually didn't help them at all for any number of reasons. Actually, a text-based form of communication, especially with difficult subject matter, was actually better for them because it gave them time to process what they were reading, and it gave them time to form their thoughts in replying. Whereas I'm naturally a more chatty person and I would prefer to do something one-on-one. It actually didn't help them at all. It caused them no end of frustration. And so I had to learn to actually really engage with the sort of text side of things, because it really helped them to process what we were trying to get through. So
I love that. I love the consideration behind that, Alex, because it's really about the person on the other side, isn't it? So knowing what the preferences are of that person. How would you like me? I need to discuss this thing with you. How would you prefer me to communicate with you? Would you prefer an email? Would you prefer a conversation? But if the relationship is strong, if they know that you're for them, then that's when it can increase the percentages here. So I guess for me, as we just ring off now, is what's your next step on all of this? Is there a person who you might need to go back to and have challenge and bring challenge in a healthy way? Or is there a space in the provisional plan promise that perhaps you or another person might need some intentionality in? So who is the person? As always, 5 circles of influence. Who is the person and which is the tool, which is the aspect of the tool that you need to be intentional in. Who needs to learn the provisional plan promise tool? Is it your team? Is it your family? So thank you so much for engaging once again with those tools, and we will see you in a couple of weeks. We are going to send around a poll because we're hoping that in October we'll be able to have our last meeting live. So we want to see whether it's possible to get everybody together. We'd love to have some refreshments. We'd love to have a bit of a celebration moment and have those last two tools, hopefully with the other group as well. So you can see those fellow Sherpas and know who else is walking with you on this journey. So yeah, look out for that email, and we'd love, yeah, please do send a response quickly to Claire so we know where we're going for the last meeting, the celebration meeting. Thank you. Have a lovely rest of the day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye bye.